What is going on, everyone? My name is Quentin Gooden, and I hope you're having a good day today. This is my 1991 Mazda MX-5 Miata, and I've had this thing for 5 years now. Today, I'm going to go over how much it has costed to maintain this car and drive it for 5 great years. I hope you enjoy the video. So first, what we're going to do, we're going to get into the most expensive part of this car, the engine. So as I said before, this was the most expensive thing to maintain on this car, but it's still not very expensive when it comes to like other sports cars, like, well, my Corvette. So here's what I spent on this thing. So last year, this was one of the most expensive things I've done to this thing. I had the timing belt and the water pump replaced, along with the front seal, which was leaking oil, and it's very common on these for them to leak out the front. But that thing was pretty much destroyed and it needed to be done. So the water pump, the timing belt, and the oil seal was about $600 to do with labor. The parts themselves was around $200 to $300, so that's $800 already. Then within the first year of me owning this car, I had to replace the starter. Now, the starter was a used unit, remanufactured, that I got from O'Reilly's, and I had put it on myself. Now, that starter was $86, and that puts me at $886. So, that was one of the first things I had to do to this thing. And I also had to replace the clutch and slave master cylinders for the clutch. Now, they were pretty cheap. I bought them from AutoZone for about $40. And one of the problems I actually had with that cheap slave cylinder is that it leaked really bad. Every time I pressed the clutch in, it would leak. And I had to refill the master cylinder with brake fluid. Now, I fixed that problem. I actually ended up buying another master cylinder for about $40, and it hasn't been leaking ever since. Now, let's get into the recent things. So, a few weeks ago, I actually said in my last video, I had all of my coolant hoses replaced. So, it's this one. There's one down there that I also replaced myself when it blew, and there's also another one at the bottom of the radiator. Then there's also these two, which goes to the heater core. Now, I bought the entire hose set off of Mazda Miata. These are OEM Miata hoses from Mazda, and that was, I think, around $120 for the set. Now, there's also these hoses too. They are also in the kit that I'm going to be replacing myself pretty soon, but they're not in dire need because this hose was pretty much on the verge of blowing up as well. So that puts me to around 800 plus 86 plus 40, no, 60. That puts me around 940 plus the 120 for the hoses. That puts me at around 940 plus 120. That's 1,060. So I put $1,060 into this engine, and then add labor. It was about $500 to have these hoses put on. So that puts me at around 1,560. And then I also had to buy another starter the same week that I had these hoses replaced. I went to the gas station after having these hoses put on, and the starter went out. That was an extra $600. The starter was around $280. The labor was around $380 as well. So yeah, it was not good. So about an extra $600. That puts me at $2,160. And then of course there's the oil changes, but I'm not really going to count that because it varies depending on what you like to use. I personally like to use Mobil 1 oil filters or Mazda oil filters. And I use Mobil 1 oil, either 10W30 or 10W40. And for the last thing that I've done with this was I replaced this coolant temperature sensor yesterday actually. And now the car runs a lot better and runs a lot cooler as well. That was about $30 really. The sensor itself is 20 bucks, $19. Now, and shipping was about 10 bucks for me. But that pretty much ends it with the engine. And $21.60 for 5 years on the engine itself. That's not bad at all. Now, we're going to get into the interior. All right, now we're getting into one of the least expensive things on this car, the interior. Now, I've actually done a lot of work to this interior over the years, and there's still some things that I need to do. As you can see, the headrests are starting to split, and the top needs to be replaced because of the windows. Now, speaking of the top, the most expensive thing that I spent on the interior, if you count this as the interior, is the top. I spent about $300 for the top itself and about $100 for the rain rails. Labor to install the top was $450, which is a really good deal compared to how much it costs to repair other tops. Luckily, there is a person that specializes in Miatas in my area, so I was able to get a good deal. Now, the second most expensive thing that I have had to replace in the interior was the shifter. Now, the shifter was very loose and I had to buy a rebuild kit. Now, I bought the rebuild kit from Mazda Miata and it was $100. Now, we are in 850 plus 26. That'll be 3210. So that would make this 3310. And then onwards, I also replaced the headrest speakers because they were pretty bad on here. And those were $90 off of eBay. It's pretty much an OEM set that I bought, and it pretty much makes the car sound a lot better inside. And then going on to the third most expensive thing I spent on this car, this door card. Now, the original door card to this car was pretty banged up and torn, so I bought this one off of eBay. Now, I'm debating if I want to get rid of these and replace them with some of the door cards I've seen off of Carbon Miata. I'm definitely going to get some seat covers for these off of there. But this eBay unit was about $80. This was used. It came off of another NA, one with crank windows instead of the power windows that this one has. And on to the last thing. On to one of the last things I had to replace and I had to do to this interior was the rubber floor mats. Now, these rubber floor mats were pretty cheap, $40. $40 for the rubber floor mats. And be honest, it's definitely made driving this thing a lot better, especially in the rain. Now, on to the last thing, I had to replace these seat belts. These seatbelt latches were each 40 bucks. And be honest, these are actually really hard to find. Now, I've always had this one. I had it for a while. I actually got it whenever I had the top replaced. I bought it from the guy who replaced it. And I bought this one from eBay. It actually took me a while to finally buy this one because, well, normally I don't have passengers anyway. So I was kind of procrastinating finally getting one, but it's finally in. But that's pretty much it with the interior. So $33.10 plus $110 for the speakers and the door card, that would be $34.20. Then it'll be $34.60 for the floor mats. And then a cool $3,500 I spent on this car so far with the interior and the engine. Now, getting to the back area of this car, we're going to start with this finish panel. Now, as you guys know, these cars are notorious for having crappy finish panels, and the finish panel had been broken on this car ever since I got it. I found this one on eBay for about 300 bucks, and it's been pretty good ever since. It definitely changed the look of this car. It doesn't look as busted up as it used to. Now, we're going to open the hood, the bonnet, the trunk. I'm going to show you what I've done back here. It really isn't much, and some of the stuff I actually did kind of get for free, like this spare tire. This is not the original spare tire. This is a 15 that actually came off of this Civic that I bought. And I actually just stuck in here because there was another spare tire in the Civic. Then there's also this top cover. I'm not going to include that. This is really just something that I wanted to get because of the holes on the top. And then we got the battery. This is my second battery, and I bought this from AutoZone for about 150 bucks. This is the second battery I got from AutoZone because the first battery actually failed, but luckily I still had the warranty. And now we get to the second most expensive part of this car, the underbody. So the underbody of the car, I bought these wheels off of Facebook Marketplace for 500 bucks. Now, it came with some decent tires. They were Firestones, and they were still up to date. This was back in 21, and the tires were good from like, I think 2016. So the tires weren't that bad. But I ended up having to put some new tires on it. These aren't really expensive. I paid about 200 bucks for these tires off of Amazon, and now I'm running a staggered setup. These are 185s in the front and 195s in the rear. These are performance tires, and they definitely do grip the road a lot better than those Firestones did. So 500 bucks plus the 150 that I had to spend on that battery. I forgot to add that in the last segment. So 650 plus 3,500, that would be 4,150. So that's pretty much it with the wheels. We're getting to the exhaust, which costed me 200 bucks to do. The muffler was 100 bucks. I bought that off of Summit Racing. It is a Borla Pro XS, and be honest, it's probably the best sounding Miata that I've ever heard. It's definitely not ricey. It's kind of an old school sound. Now ignore this. I do plan on getting an exhaust tip welded on there soon, but I'll get that towards the end of the video. And now for the most expensive thing that I've done underneath the car was the suspension. Now, if you guys remember, back in early 23, about 2 years ago, I actually wrecked this thing, which is the reason why the bumper looks like that. And when I wrecked it, I bent the control arm. Since I bent the control arm, I needed to replace the suspension. So I had all 4 struts replaced, and I also had the control arm replaced. That costed me about 600 bucks for everything, and an extra 100 bucks for an alignment. So that's 600 bucks plus 4150. That is 4650. And pretty much we are where the car is now. This car is pretty much at the best that it's been in a long time, especially after I replaced that coolant temperature sensor. It definitely runs a lot better now. But in 5 years, I have spent 45, 46.50 on this car when it comes to maintenance, excluding oil changes and excluding fuel. But really, this is why I say the Miata is probably the best sports car that you can get, because really a lot of that was stuff that I did and didn't really need to be done, like the wheels and the suspension. The suspension was my fault for wrecking the car. The wheels is just something that I wanted on the car. But there's a lot of things I do have planned for this car. I plan on getting a paint job. Now, I got a quote for it. It's going to be $2,300, $2,000 for the paint job to get it back to where it needs to be, and an extra $300 to polish these wheels from where I crashed and messed them up. And this one is just faded. I'm going to get a new top. I expect that to be about $1,000, and the seat covers from Miata is $300. But pretty much everything on this car is just about perfect now. It runs good. It runs cool. It doesn't overheat. None of the hoses are going to blow. I don't have to worry about the timing belt anytime soon, or the water pump. And I forgot, I also changed the transmission fluid. That was about $80. So make that 47.30. But you can't really complain, because with this Corvette, I owned it for over a year, and it costed me $2,000 within the first few months. So 47 compared to 2,000 in the first month, and then 47 in 5 years, I really consider that a good deal. That's what I do like about these Miatas. They are so easy to maintain and so cheap. I really do think it's the perfect sports car, controversial as that is. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll show you guys the journey that I'm having with this car again. Goodbye.